Hello! Hey, welcome to the Purposeful Parenting webinar. Oh man, I'm so excited that you're here. I want to give just a couple seconds here, a couple minutes, make sure everyone is able to see my screen. You were able to click the right buttons and we're good to go. So let's go real quick the overview of what we'll be discussing today. That way everyone's on the same page. So I want to introduce myself. We're going to talk about who's the boss. I love this one. We're going to talk about what to do in certain situations with your child. Also, that word, oh my gosh, noncompliance. I hear that all the time from parents. So we're going to talk about noncompliance and the kind of the rationale, like what's going on with your kid when they are not listening. And then finally, we'll talk about what's next, what's going to happen after this webinar. So, like I said, let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Wallach. I'm a former classroom teacher. I have my master's in education. I am now what's called a behavior analyst or board certified behavior analyst, which pretty much just means that I work with kids with special needs, work with kids with extreme or challenging behaviors. I am the founder of Starfish Parenting, which we'll talk about here shortly. And I have over 15 years of experience working with children of ages really young, all the way up to middle school and high school aged children. Let's go real quick over the origin stories of starfish parenting. Why in the world would I choose starfish? Well, I remember this story when I was younger of this small town where all these starfish washed ashore after this storm. And these starfish were drying out. And a little girl comes along and she wants to make a difference. So she starts picking up the starfish one at a time and throwing them back into the water. She's doing this all day long. She's throwing the starfish. And all of a sudden a man comes up to her and asks her, "What are you doing? What difference do you think you can make? You're just one person. You can't save all these starfish." So this girl, kind of feeling defeated, takes a moment. She bends down, picks up another starfish, and launches it back into the water. And she looks at the man and tells him, "I made a difference to that one." And she keeps doing it. "I made a difference to that one." So that's the idea. Making a difference. One family at a time. One child at a time. I love that idea, and I love that concept of moving forward and making small differences that will ripple out within our family and within our community and within our world. So our first behavior concept I want to talk about is this concept of the boss. You in your home are expected to be the boss, right? We're expected to tell our kids what to do and when to do it, and they're supposed to comply. They're supposed to do what we tell them to do. We're the adult. But I want you to think of some things that you often hear parents tell their kids. Maybe like in those instances where you're like trying to get your kid to leave the playground. You're trying to get your kid out of the bathtub. You're trying to get your kid into the bathtub. So those things where it's like, oh my gosh, this kid is driving me crazy. So sometimes when we are in those situations, we might say things like, "No, thank you." We hear that all the time from parents or teachers. Kids hear that, right? Or maybe we hear, "How many times do I have to tell you?" Or what about this? 1, 2. I've never heard a parent actually say 3, so I really am curious what would happen. Or what about this one? Do you want a spanking? Do you want to go home? Do you want a timeout? And last one, maybe if I have to tell you one more time, or if you do that one more time, right? So that's what kids are hearing from us as adults. They're hearing these phrases often. And now what I'd like you to think about is hearing these statements, these phrases, not from a parent, but what if you heard these from your boss? Your boss at work told you any one of these things. If your boss told you, How many times do I have to tell you? How many times do I have to show you how to do this work? Do you want to pay decrease? If you do that one more time, right? Any one of these phrases, how would you feel as an adult? You would, of course, feel ashamed or feel frustrated, feel just like zero, right? You would feel like, man, this is not how I want to be treated as an adult. And you would go home, you would vent on the way home from work. You would be calling whoever, your spouse, your sibling, and when you got home, you would still be thinking about it. Your heart rate would still be up. This is exactly how children feel when we use these phrases. But instead of being able to vent and talk about it and work it out, children are going to use the weirdest behaviors. They're going to melt down, tantrum, sulk, all these different things to show you, Mom, I don't like it. I don't like when you tell me those things. So that's our first behavior concept of just think of ourselves as the boss, and how do we want to relay our information to the child in a more positive way. And guess what? There are actually ways, there are alternatives to any of these phrases. And if you'd like to know those, I could teach you. So our next thing I'd like to talk about is what to do when appropriate behavior occurs. Oftentimes we talk about what we should do when a kid is having a meltdown, what we should do when a kid is not sharing, is not doing this, not doing that. We want to talk about all these different things we can do as an adult. And you get advice from your parents about what you should have done. Of course, you hear that. But we never, ever, ever talk about what we can do when the child is doing something appropriate. And there are specific things you can do, and I love these, and I want to share them with you. The first one is you can give attention. Simple. You want to show your child that when they're doing appropriate things, that's when mommy, that's when daddy is going to be all up in their face and just be like, boom, I love this. And when they're sharing, when they're asking politely for things, that's when they're going to get your attention. The next one's a little more specific. I want you to be amazed. So I think about my daughter when she was maybe two or so, or 3 years old. I would often do this at the dinner table. She's eating her food just like I want her to. She's doing appropriate behavior. I would look under the table, around the table, under her shirt. I'd be, where did your food go? Where did it go? And she's laughing, pointing at her tummy, pointing at her mouth. She's eating it up. So she knows when she does appropriate things, Daddy is amazed. So you can think about that with them cleaning up. Who cleaned all this up? How did you know how to do all this? How did you know where to put all these different toys? So when we're amazed, kids, their eyes light up. Another thing you can do when a child's doing something appropriate is give them behavior-specific praise. Now, this is different than just normal praise. Good job, way to go, awesome. Behavior-specific praise teaches the child what you want them to do the next time. So think about maybe a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid who you're teaching them how to make their bed. When you help them and they complete making their bed, you could give them specific praise. Wow, I like how you made it so flat. I like how you made it so straight. So the next time they're making their bed, they're going to think of those words. Flat, straight, right? If we would have flipped it and just said, good job making your bed, which part of it did I do good, right? And so I want you to think real quick. Think about something you could remember from your childhood of someone giving you specific praise, and you remembered that for many years to come. I mean, I could think about, for me, I think of one where I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. I was visiting my dad out of state. He was working out of state, and we were playing basketball. And just random guys at a park. And what I like to do with playing basketball, I just like to run around. That's all I was really doing. I really didn't know what I was doing as an 8-year-old kid. But this guy who we were playing with came up to me afterward and he said, "You did a really good job of running without the ball. You were so active without the ball. Instead of always wanting the basketball." Right. If you're not a basketball player, yeah. But I still do that in my 30s. I still play basketball and think about that. I need to be moving without the basketball. So think about that. I'm sure there are things you remember from your childhood that people said specifically that you replicated. You never, ever replicated when someone told you, "Awesome! Way to go!" So that's a big one. That's a huge one I will talk about from all day long is behavior-specific praise. The next thing you could do, I love this one, is you can take things away from kids. Now, I'm not talking about taking away their iPad or taking away candy. I'm talking about taking away things that may be non-preferred. So if your kid does not want to clean their room, your kid does not want to eat vegetables, your kid does not want to do their homework assignment, take it away once they're doing the appropriate behavior. They're cleaning the room. Hey, wow! I really like how you've been cleaning the room. I'm going to take this side over here. Don't worry about that. I got this side. I took it away. The next time they're going to be much more likely to clean their room because, hey, good things happen when I'm appropriately cleaning, appropriately doing. Hey, wow, you've eaten almost all your food. Don't worry about these last 2 carrots. Those are for me. And the last thing I like to do is just be present when they are doing appropriate behaviors. Put down my phone and be with them. This shows your child, just like giving attention at the beginning, this shows your child that you value their appropriate behaviors much more than when they're whining or taking things away from their sibling or arguing. If we're on our phone and hanging out and doing our thing, and the only time we interact with our kids is when they're doing inappropriate behaviors. Hey, you two, knock it off. Hey, you two, give that back to her. Hey, stop. Your kid is going to see you not as this person who's on their side, who's able to play with them and interact with them. It's just you're just this authority figure in the house that just curtails all their behavior. So we want to rather be present and be available to them all the time, not just the inappropriate. So I love those. I love talking about appropriate ways we can show our children that we want to see more of their appropriate behaviors. Cool. Here it is, the big one. So let's talk about non-compliance. Honestly, this is like top 3 every single time I ask parents, what do they deal with? What's their main struggle? So here's a few things to think about if your child is showing non-compliance. Let's get into it. Here we go. All right, I want you to first think about how many demands you're putting on your child each day. The amount of demands is gotta be over 100, maybe closer to 200, 300 demands. Put this on, don't touch that, get over here, put these on, brush your teeth, go wash your hands. All day long. Think back to the boss, right? If your boss was constantly giving you demands, it'd be overwhelming. So be really strategic about your demands. And there's ways to limit our demands by doing other strategies, and you will learn those. I'll teach you those as well. The next thing I always think about non-compliance is, I wrote here, say my name. If you are often saying your child's name and following it up with a demand, guess what's going to happen to the value of your child's name? It will decrease. Your child is going to tune out anything you say after you say their name because they're so used to hearing, Luke, get your shoes. Luke, come over here. Luke, get down from there. If that is what you're doing to your child, saying their name in a demand, it's going to drive them crazy, and they're tuning you out. They're showing you with their behavior that I'm not interested in hearing anything you're saying because it's just too much. Oh, let me just say real quick with that, say my name. I love this. So if you find you are saying your child's name a lot, it's just like, what else am I supposed to do? Catch them off guard. Luke! I love you, man. You are the best kid I know. Luke! I really like how you just cleaned up that whole side of the room. So catch them. Catch them, say their name, and lead it right into something that you want to show them that you value about them. Next thing when you're thinking about noncompliance is think about your voice, your tone of voice. If you are doing a sing-songy demand to your child, I'm really bad at sing-songy. I'm going to give it a try here, but put your shoes on. that was not very good. But you can imagine if I'm doing sing-songy to get my kid to do something, especially for younger children or children who maybe have special needs, they cannot differentiate. Are you giving me a demand right now, or are you trying to give me praise? Which one is it? That's what they're thinking in their head. So instead, when you give a demand, it should be neutral. Luke, put your shoes on. Right? And then when Luke puts his shoes on, that's when you can go over the top. You can get excited. You can do sing-songy, totally. But when you're giving a demand, make it as neutral as possible. Do not paragraph your kid. If you're given a paragraph in order for them to brush their teeth, most likely they will not brush their teeth. It's got to be short and simple. It's got to be keep it simple. Silly, I think the last S is silly. So keep it short and sweet. That way your child hears the direction and then they can follow through. And when they don't follow through with it, we help them. Next thing you want to be is consistent. If you're consistent with your child, you're showing them over time that when I tell you to do something, I'm going to help you do it if you don't do it. So you better just do it anyway. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to give you a boss statement. I'm going to help you complete the task. And last thing is, you want to set really clear expectations. And when those expectations are told to a student or a child, then you can practice those behaviors. Practice what you want to see. I'll give you a quick story about my daughter. When I dropped her off at school one time, and she was like 4 years old, and she started crying. I'm sure you've had that where you have a difficulty with drop off. My daughter actually was always excited to go to school, but this one time I was like, man, I don't want to deal with a child having really emotional time with drop off. So that night I thought, man, I really want to practice this skill. I want to show her this is what drop off should look like. So that night we made a little school in our playroom. We got her backpack on, lunchbox, everything ready to go. We practiced me walking her to the school playroom, and I dropped her off. We gave each other a hug and kiss and said goodbye. We practiced it until she was ready to go. The next morning rolls around. We get her lunchbox, we get her backpack, we go into the classroom, we give a hug and kiss, and she looks at me with like this actress. She's like, "Bye, Dad." It cracked me up. Like, oh my gosh, that's so like staged. But she practiced that skill, and the next day she was able to put it into practice or make it work. So think about that when you're with your kids. Like, practice any skill you need them to practice. Practice sharing. Practice asking nicely. Practice asking for more time with something. They want more screen time. They want more bath time. That's perfect opportunity to practice. And in those practice moments, it's so much fun because now you can act up. You can pretend like you're the child. You can have them see you be silly. and show them the appropriate way to ask for more time and the inappropriate way to ask for more time. Kids crack up, and I love those times of practicing. And then you can use those during the actual moment and just say, hey, remember we practiced this. And then hopefully that triggers the child to remember, oh, yeah, I can ask for more time. Woo! That was fun. Sorry if that was really loud, my woof there. But I want to get to what's next. I would like to offer you, if you found like this information, this short webinar was useful, if you felt like you could use some of this information already with your own child, there is so much more. And I want to offer that to you in a course that I've designed that is for almost any single child out there, that even that perfect angel little child, even the child who's driving you crazy. This course is designed to give you the tools and strategies to better meet your child's needs, to lower both yours and your child's frustration. Remember, the boss. So, I'm going to offer you, there's two amazing options. The first option, you take that course, you do it with your spouse, your partner, you do it by yourself, you go at it, you get all the information. It's an amazing course that I think you will get so much information out of that you can directly apply to your family. The second option is to do it with a group. Imagine being in a like-minded group of parents who are wanting to improve their skills and going through it in a several-week course that we can all sit down together, talk about the content, talk about what worked, what are we struggling with, what improvements have we already seen in our children. So I really want you to take a look at those two options on our website and see which option is best for you and your family. And it's definitely an investment in yourself and in your family. And I find that if you're willing to invest your money, you are much more likely to implement. So think about your family. Think about where you want to be in 5, 6, 8 months from now. What difference could it make to have a replacements to your boss phrases you may be currently using? So I want to thank you so much for listening to this webinar, and I really appreciate any feedback that you would like to give. Please check us out at starfishparenting.com, and I'm so excited to work with you and your family. So please consider it, and I'm so excited to get started. Thank you.